The marble floors of Sterling Manor echoed with Victoria's hurried footsteps as she dragged her designer luggage through the grand foyer. The Tokyo negotiations had concluded 2 days early, but exhaustion weighed on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. All she wanted was the sanctuary of her private study and a glass of her father's vintage scotch. The house felt different in the darkness, too quiet, yet somehow alive with an energy that made her pulse quicken. Victoria had dismissed her entire staff for the week, knowing they wouldn't expect her return until Wednesday. The silence should have been absolute, but it wasn't. A soft scraping sound drifted from the direction of her office, followed by what sounded like wood creaking under pressure. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. Her security system showed no breaches, no alarms. Yet someone was in her private sanctuary. She slipped off her heels, padding barefoot across the cold marble. The study door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the crack. Victoria pressed herself against the wall, her breath shallow. As she peered inside, a man knelt beside her father's massive oak desk, his broad shoulders straining against a simple gray uniform. The janitor. Adrian, she thought his name was. She'd barely noticed him during his 3 years of service, just a quiet presence who cleaned efficiently and never intruded. But he wasn't cleaning now. His long fingers worked carefully inside what appeared to be a hidden compartment in the desk's side panel. Documents, photographs, and sealed envelopes lay scattered across the leather desktop. Victoria's breath caught as she recognized her father's handwriting on several letters. "You weren't supposed to see this?" Adrian's voice was low, rough with an emotion she'd never heard from the soft-spoken custodian. He hadn't turned around, but somehow he knew she was there. Victoria pushed the door open, her silk blouse rustling in the sudden tension. "What are you doing with my father's things?" Adrian rose slowly, his movements fluid and controlled in a way that seemed inconsistent with the humble janitor she thought she knew. When he turned to face her, Victoria's breath caught. Gone was the downward gaze of the unobtrusive employee. Instead, intense gray eyes met hers directly, filled with intelligence, regret, and something that looked dangerously like desire. "My name is Adrian Cross," he said, his voice carrying authority that commanded attention. "I'm not really a janitor, Ms. Sterling. I'm a federal agent, and I've been protecting you for 3 years. The words hit her like a physical blow. Victoria gripped the doorframe, her knees suddenly weak. "Protecting me from what?" Adrian's jaw tightened as he gestured to the documents spread across the desk. "From the people who killed your father, the same people who have been waiting, watching, planning to finish what they started." Victoria's gaze fell to a photograph in the scattered papers. Her father shaking hands with a man whose face was partially obscured by shadow. Her father looked afraid, something she'd never seen in all her memories of the powerful, confident businessman. "They're coming for you, Victoria," Adrian continued, stepping closer. His proximity sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "And after tonight, after what you've seen, we're running out of time." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she whispered, though something deep inside her already believed him. It would explain the way her pulse raced whenever he was near, the strange sense of safety she felt in his presence. Adrian reached into his uniform pocket and withdrew a federal badge, then a photograph of himself in a suit, clearly official. "Because," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate tone that made her stomach flutter, "you need to know the truth before they come for you." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, and Victoria realized her world had just shifted on its axis. Victoria's hands trembled as she lifted the photograph, studying her father's face in the dim light. The fear in his eyes was unmistakable now that she knew what to look for. "Tell me everything," she whispered. Adrian moved to her side, close enough that she could smell his subtle cologne. Expensive, she realized, nothing like what a janitor could afford. Your father discovered that Sterling Industries was being used to launder money for the Kozlov Syndicate. They'd been slowly placing their people in key positions throughout your company. He spread more documents across the desk, his fingers brushing hers as he pointed to financial records. The brief contact sent electricity racing up her arm. 3 years ago, your father tried to expose them. He gathered evidence, prepared to go to the authorities. But he disappeared first. Victoria's voice cracked. She'd always suspected her father's death wasn't accidental, but hearing it confirmed felt like losing him all over again. He was murdered, Victoria. But not before he managed to hide this evidence. Adrian's voice softened with compassion. The FBI has been building a case ever since. When we learned they were planning to make their final move on Sterling Industries, I volunteered to go undercover. Victoria looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. The strong jaw, the intelligent eyes, the way he carried himself, with quiet confidence. You volunteered to become a janitor? To watch over me? A flush crept up Adrian's neck. The assignment was supposed to last 6 months, but... He paused, his gaze intense. But the longer I watched you, the more I realized you weren't just another assignment. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Victoria had always prided herself on reading people, yet this man had been invisible to her for 3 years while she'd felt inexplicably drawn to his quiet presence. You've been protecting me, she said, the realization hitting her fully. All those times I worked late alone, when I felt like someone was watching over me. I was. His admission was barely above a whisper. Every late night, every business trip, every moment you might have been vulnerable. I was there. Victoria's breath caught as memories flooded back. The janitor who always seemed to be cleaning nearby when she felt uneasy. The mysterious repairs that kept her office running perfectly, the subtle sense of security she'd attributed to good building management. My God, she breathed. The night someone tried to break into my penthouse 6 months ago, I stopped them. Adrian's jaw tightened. That was their first real attempt. They're getting bolder, more desperate. She studied his face, noting the small scar above his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands that spoke of more than janitorial work. You could have been killed. You could have been killed. The intensity in his voice made her heart race. Do you understand what that would have done to me? What it does to me every day, knowing they want to hurt you. The vulnerability in his confession broke something loose inside her chest. This strong, dangerous man had been silently sacrificing his life for hers. Why? She whispered. Why risk everything? Adrian stepped closer, his hand reaching up to touch her face before he caught himself. Because somewhere along the way, protecting you stopped being my job and became my everything. Thunder crashed outside, and Victoria realized she was falling for the man who had been loving her from the shadows. We have to leave. Now. Adrian's voice cut through the charged atmosphere as he began gathering the documents. My surveillance detected movement at the perimeter 10 minutes ago. They know you're here. Victoria's heart hammered as the reality of danger crashed over her. Where can we go? I have a safe house. Adrian moved to the bookshelf, pressing a sequence of leather spines. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage. Your father installed this escape route years ago. As they hurried through the dark corridor, Victoria stumbled over uneven stone. Adrian's arm immediately circled her waist, pulling her against his solid chest. I've got you, he murmured against her hair, and she felt safer than she had in years. They emerged into a hidden garage where a nondescript SUV waited. As Adrian helped her into the passenger seat, Victoria winced. She twisted her ankle in the passage. It's nothing, she insisted, but Adrian was already kneeling beside the open car door. His hands were gentle but sure as he examined her ankle through her silk stocking. "It's swelling. We'll take care of it at the cabin." His touch sent fire, racing through her veins, and she had to grip the seat to keep from reaching out to run her fingers through his dark hair. The drive through winding mountain roads was tense, with more than just fear. Every glance Adrian threw her way made her pulse quicken. When he reached across to squeeze her hand reassuringly, she didn't let go. The safe house was a rustic cabin hidden deep in the woods, but it was well equipped and comfortable. Adrian carried her inside despite her protests, his arms strong around her as he settled her on the leather couch. "Let me look at that ankle properly," he said, kneeling before her. His fingers were warm as he carefully removed her torn stockings, his touch reverent rather than clinical. Victoria bit back a gasp at the intimacy of the moment. "Adrian," she whispered, her hand moving to touch his cheek. He froze under her caress, his gray eyes darkening with desire. "Victoria, He struggled with words, torn between duty and longing. "I've wanted to touch you like this for 3 years, to tell you how I feel, but I'm supposed to protect you, not—" "Not what?" She leaned forward, her lips inches from his. "Not care about me? Not let yourself feel what I see in your eyes?" "You don't understand," he said roughly, though he made no move to pull away. "If I cross this line, if I let myself love you the way I want to, I might not be able to think clearly enough to keep you safe." "Then let me keep you safe too," she whispered, and closed the distance between them. The kiss was explosive, 3 years of suppressed longing igniting between them. Adrian's control shattered as he pulled her closer, his mouth hungry and desperate against hers. Victoria melted into him, finally understanding why no other man had ever made her feel complete. When they broke apart, breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "God help me, Victoria. I love you. I've loved you from the moment I first saw you crying alone in your office after that board meeting." "I remember that night," she breathed. "I felt like someone was watching over me, keeping me safe even when I felt so alone." "Always," he promised, his thumb tracing her lips. "I'll always watch over you." Their second kiss was slower, deeper, full of promise and surrender. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, Victoria had found her sanctuary in Adrian's arms. Victoria woke in Adrian's arms as dawn filtered through the cabin windows. His chest rose and fell steadily beneath her cheek, and she'd never felt more protected or cherished. The night had been a revelation, not just of passion, but of a connection deeper than she'd ever imagined possible. Her phone buzzed urgently, on the nightstand. Helena, her assistant of 5 years, was calling repeatedly. "Don't answer it," Adrian murmured, his arms tightening around her. But something in the insistent ringing made Victoria reach for the device. "Helena, I told you I wouldn't be—" "Miss Sterling, thank God!" Helena's voice was shaky, panicked. "There's been a break-in at the mansion. The police are asking questions. Where are you? I need to know you're safe." Victoria met Adrian's suddenly alert gaze. He was already reaching for his weapon, his entire demeanor shifting to high alert. "Something was wrong. I'm safe, Helena. I'm at the—" Adrian lunged forward, ending the call and pulling Victoria away from the window. "That was a mistake," he said grimly. "Helena's been compromised. She's been feeding them information." "That's impossible," Victoria protested. "Helena's been with me for years. She's like family." The sound of approaching vehicles cut through the morning air. Adrian cursed under his breath, already pulling on his clothes. "Family betrays you when the price is right. Get dressed. We need to move." But it was too late. The cabin door exploded inward, and armed men poured through the entrance. Adrian shoved Victoria behind the couch, returning fire with deadly precision. In the chaos, she saw Helena step through the doorway, her familiar face cold and calculating. "Hello, Victoria," Helena said calmly, as if they were meeting for their usual morning briefing. "I'm sorry it came to this, but you've caused us considerable trouble." "How long?" Victoria's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "How long have you been lying to me?" "Since the day I was hired," Helena replied without remorse. "Did you really think it was coincidence that I was so perfectly qualified? Your father was getting close to exposing us. We needed eyes and ears inside Sterling Industries." Adrian appeared beside Victoria, blood seeping through his shirt from a graze on his shoulder. "The backup is 5 minutes out," he whispered urgently. "We just need to stay alive until then." "Your boyfriend is quite resourceful," Helena observed, her gun trained on them. "We never suspected the janitor was federal. Clever." "He's more than you'll ever understand," Victoria said fiercely, surprising herself with her vehemence. Seeing Adrian wounded, knowing he'd risked everything for her, crystallized every feeling she'd been afraid to acknowledge. "And you made one crucial mistake, Helena." "Which is?" "You underestimated what I'm capable of when someone threatens the man I love." Victoria grabbed the heavy crystal decanter from the side table and hurled it at the chandelier overhead. As sparks and glass rained down, Adrian used the distraction to take down 2 of the gunmen. Victoria snatched up a fallen weapon, her father's hunting lessons finally proving useful. The sound of helicopters filled the air as Adrian's backup arrived. In the ensuing firefight, Helena and her remaining men were captured, but their leader, a man Victoria now recognized from her father's photographs, escaped in the confusion. Later, as paramedics treated Adrian's wound, he caught her hand. "You saved us back there," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "Your father would be proud." "I couldn't lose you," she whispered, tears finally coming. "Not when I've just found you." "Hey," he said softly, pulling her close with his good arm. "I'm not going anywhere. It's going to take more than a bullet graze to keep me from loving you." As the FBI agents led Helena away, Victoria felt a chapter of her life closing and a new one beginning. The truth was finally coming to light. But more importantly, she'd found the man who would stand beside her through whatever came next. 6 months later, Victoria stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, watching the city wake up beneath a golden sunrise. Sterling Industries had been completely restructured, purged of corruption, and transformed into the ethical empire her father had always envisioned. The Kozlov Syndicate was dismantled, its leaders facing life sentences, and the threat that had shadowed her family for years was finally gone. "Admiring your kingdom, Ms. Sterling?" Adrian's warm voice made her smile as his arms encircled her from behind. She leaned back against his chest, still marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "Our kingdom," she corrected, turning in his embrace. "Cross Security has been the best investment Sterling Industries ever made." Adrian's private security firm had grown rapidly, staffed with former federal agents and military personnel he trusted, implicitly. Victoria had been his first client, though now their relationship was far more than business. "I have something for you," he said, his voice unusually nervous. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Nothing ever made Adrian Cross nervous anymore. He led her to her father's old desk, to the hidden compartment that had started everything between them. But instead of documents and photographs, it now held a small velvet box. Victoria's breath caught as Adrian dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the morning light, like captured stars. "Victoria Sterling," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his gray eyes. "6 months ago, you walked into this office and found me with secrets I'd kept for 3 years. You had every reason to never trust me again, but instead, you gave me your heart." Tears blurred her vision as he continued. "You've made me want to be worthy of the love you've shown me. You've taught me that protection isn't just about keeping someone safe. It's about helping them become everything they're meant to be. Adrian, she whispered, her hands shaking. I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you, not as your guardian, but as your partner, as your husband, as the man who loves you more than his own life. He took her left hand, his thumb tracing over her fingers. Will you marry me? Yes, she breathed, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Victoria pulled him to his feet and kissed him with all the love and passion she'd been saving for a lifetime. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. I love you, Agent Cross, she murmured against his lips. I love you too, Ms. Sterling, though I think you should start practicing saying Mrs. Cross. The sound of applause made them turn to find the entire executive team gathered at the office door, Helena's replacement, beaming as she held a bottle of champagne. Word traveled fast in the Sterling building, and Victoria had never been happier about the gossip mill. Later that evening, as they sat on the terrace of Adrian's penthouse apartment, Victoria traced the scar on his shoulder, a permanent reminder of the day he'd risked everything for her. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Giving up federal work? The missions? The adventure? Adrian caught her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing her palm tenderly. The only mission that ever mattered to me is loving you. Everything else was just practice for this. As the sun set over the city, Victoria realized that the scared, young woman who'd inherited Sterling Industries had finally found her strength. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the love of the man who'd been watching over her all along. The hidden compartment in her father's desk now held their engagement photos, wedding plans, and love letters. They wrote each other during Adrian's occasional travel. The space, once filled with secrets and danger, now overflowed with hope and promises for their future. Some guardians, Victoria thought as Adrian's arms tightened around her, were worth keeping forever.